All right, so good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Woods Hole Film Festival Kids Day. This year, 2020, we're very excited to have a couple of short documentary films that are fun, not just for kids, but for the whole family. I think any age group would really appreciate and enjoy the films we have today. And Celestial and director, filmmaker Jack Gordon is here to tell us about his film in the 2020 Woods Hole Film Festival. And all of a sudden people are asking to join. Should we let them join? Let's just do it. Okay, that was a fun little attempt. We'll just so now this is just going to be more of a casual fun thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So, hello, Kristen. You can turn your camera on if you like to. We're just hanging out and chatting. Hello.
Hey.
How are you? We can't hear you. Okay.
We know them.
They've obviously seen the film then.
You know, I don't actually know. I think maybe she has and he has. I don't remember. I know we've had this discussion, but is there anyone else trying to join? Is it just them?
It's just right now, it's just them.
Yeah.
I think they were at the last Q&A with the live stream.
Oh.
Yeah.
So they want to yell at you for swearing in front of children? Is that?
It wasn't swearing. Yeah. I don't think.
It wasn't that bad.
No, it wasn't. We were just talking about. No, it wasn't bad at all.
Oh, okay.
We were just said that for a kids' day event, we'll just avoid those topics. It was more about what we did once we got to Bermuda.
Okay, gotcha. So it's more of a what happens in Bermuda stays in Bermuda.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Hello.
I know we were at the last one, but
that's okay. You're allowed to join as many.
fans. You have any questions, right? Is this for kids only? Because we can go find some kids
right now.
We would love to have some kids join.
Well, we're just waiting for kids to join and stuff like that. So we're kind of just chatting and whatever. But okay.
Shoot, all our kids are outside.
Okay.
You guys know Mr. Reimold, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. See you soon. Bye. Okay. Alrighty. So you have seen the film. Is that correct?
We have.
You have. Oh,
I did the first time. I saw it today for the first time.
Oh, okay. So you have both have seen the film. Cool. All right.
Twice now.
All right. And you've now you have a lot of questions, obviously. So do you know? You probably recognize the people then in the screen here. Jack's the director, and we have Chip, Connor, and Sophia from the crew. So I'm John Gamache, by the way. I'm the associate director of the film festival. This is our first virtual Kids Day event. We had no idea how this was going to go, but apparently it's just a beautiful, hot. There's no way I'm staying inside kind of day in Massachusetts today. So I think it's just going to be a cozy conversation here. So.
We don't have to take up much of your time either.
Oh,
we're going to listen to the questions that were asked, actually.
They're all contracted to be here for at least 45 minutes. So do
you have any questions? How about the drone question? Which drone? Jack, tell us a little bit about how you managed the drone, please.
Yeah, that's a kind of a fun topic that we all, one of the most memorable events in the trip as a whole, but also for the filming. It was, I was very particular about when I decided to fly the drone, because on a moving vessel, that's obviously really difficult. So we found a fairly calm night, and I wanted to get that sunset shot. And so it's an iron hulled boat, so that's not great for a drone that uses a compass and all that. And it that's a bad start. But when we taking off was for me the most stressful part, just because I wasn't sure with all the lines everywhere and so many things for the drone to hit and for us to be underway the whole time, because there's no stopping to launch a drone. We were racing. So we launched it and got some stunning shots. You see that in the film a little bit. There's plenty more where that came from, but just in terms of, there's only so much we can show. But that was the really exciting part, was getting it back in. It was really difficult to get back in because there's nowhere we can land it. There's plenty of things for it to hit on the way in. It's the battery was running low, so we really were down to the wire, and we were trying to get it in, and it has sensors that makes it not want to get anywhere near the boat because it knows it's an obstacle, so we had to turn those off. And it came to basically having someone lean out over the back of the boat on what's called a rib craft, on sort of a safety boat, and hanging off the side of that, catching it and just bringing it right in, sort of with only a couple minutes to spare on the battery. So that was very stressful for me trying to bring it in, but it turned into some stunning shots that you see in the film. And
so you only did that once?
Yep, just once. I wasn't testing the luck at all. That was stressful enough to just say that I was glad with the shots that I got, and left it at that.
So one take wonder.
Yeah.
So,
We did actually have another drone flying. It wasn't me flying it. It's really the only footage in the whole film that isn't mine. And you see that at the beginning, there's a drone shot right before the start, and that was someone else taking it. And that's the only footage that wasn't taken from on board the vessel.
I have a question for the crew. How much was Jack in the way?
Jack was not in the way. He was actually fantastic. I mean, I don't know how he managed to do it. He had all his camera stuff on deck. He had his gear taking up a whole bunk below decks, and he still managed to stay out of the way. There was never any issue of us running around deck and running into him or running into his stuff.
I got to imagine the fact that he's, a Tabor graduate and knows a bit about sailing, that probably helped him to avoid being in the way, where most people maybe who aren't quite as aware of everything you all needed to do from minute to minute, and sometimes in split seconds, might have maybe not been so out of the way. Sure, that helped. How much did he put you to work to help him out?
Again, not a lot. I think the most work that we did to help him was catching the drone and maybe moving his camera equipment. But other than that, it was all him filming everything. And yeah.
Yeah, there was one interview that we did on board, and that was with Captain Guile, and I sort of put a couple of them to work. I think Chip might have been holding the boom. There's a great shot of that someone took from on board, but really it was a really small operation, and they were very generous with helping me, and I was able to stay out of the way for the most part, but there were a few times, especially at the start, which is really hectic, where Chip would say, "You don't want to stand there. You're going to get hit by a pretty vicious line in a couple seconds." But yeah, I mean, that was big for me, was being able to film but not like getting in the way, which I don't think happened all the time, but it did end up pretty well, I think.
Yeah. Do you think that the fact that you were all being recorded for a film had any kind of an impact on your performance and the results of the race?
I don't think that being filmed really gave us any added pressure. I know that the Tabor Boy crew performs excellently under pressure. So it was more just having another friend along for the ride, just kind of capturing it all. It wasn't like now we have to act all different now. because I can speak for myself. We were all friends with Jack prior to the film, and so it was just having another friend along.
I think the vessel also requires 100% of your attention and focus almost at all times, especially during the start and like the hectic times. And so you don't really even have a chance to think about like how you're gonna look or like where the camera's gonna be. You just kind of do what you're supposed to do and do your job and sail well.
Right. But you would have thrown him overboard if you needed to lighten the load a little bit, right?
Maybe his camera equipment.
Okay.
But not Jack.
Oh, it's very generous.
Jack, there were almost 15 people, I think, on the boat, or maybe a little bit more. Is that right? Were you anticipating sticking more to footage that would highlight the few individuals? There are very few shots where we notice sort of Blake in the background or so, like we're like, oh, we didn't know so-and-so was on the boat. Was that intentional?
Yeah, so I think there were 23 people on board. Am I correct in that? Yeah. So it was my intention to focus on these three. And the main point of that was just with 23 people on board, I thought the story would be better if we really focused on those three. Now, I agree. There are some times when you can look at this and not even realize that there's 23 people on board. I think most people probably wouldn't realize that there's that many, because you sort of see people and you might see them once or you might see them in the background. And I sort of tried to toe the line between really focusing on these three and Captain Guile, while also acknowledging that it's like a full team effort and it's by no means just these three that are making this happen, that it really is everyone, whether it's the people steering the vessel or the people, the cook or the people watching out for obstacles on watch on the bow. It's so it was sort of, it was a decision I made, definitely, but did definitely focus on highlighting these three as opposed to highlighting the whole crew, and that made a little more focused story.
Obviously this is probably the most a taxing exercise in terms of using your celestial navigation skills. How often do you actually get to do that? I mean, how often do you get to sail in that fashion where or is this kind of like the one big event and then do you in everyday life sailing, is this something you use more, or is this
Celestial is primarily used for offshore sailing. Mm-hmm. So unless you're going with a crewed vessel, or if you're lucky enough to have your own offshore capable boat, you're not going to use it. And even then, most people don't. It's not the fastest way to do things. It's not the easiest way to do things by any stretch, but it's fun, and it's a connection to the history of sailing and ocean going, as all coastal countries have done for hundreds of years. This is just the way it's always been, and it's the way it always was until less than a century ago. This was the way to do it. So you don't use it in everyday life. It's not a regular thing for us. And I know the sail to Bermuda was the only time we've put it to action, at least for me, but I hope to use it in the future more.
Yeah, because obviously it's a skill, right? And there's a lot to it, and it's I guess a challenge to keep up on it when you don't get to do it very often, and your brain wants to keep doing it so that it remembers how to do these things. And this isn't something, like you said, you really get to do regularly enough to kind of get it to, I don't want to say stick, but you know what I mean. Yeah, but it's a fascinating thing to think of, all of the thousands of people who were out on the ocean at one point doing what you were doing, and doing it all the time because they were out there for months and months and months. And it's we've gotten very dependent on other means of figuring out where we are and where we're supposed to go and what we're supposed to do now. But it's probably a very refreshing, probably existence for all of you to kind of drop all that and, leave it behind for a little while and try something new that's very old, I guess. Right?
I think that was
added
interesting factor was the fact that Tabor Boy is so old, was built in 1914, and so at least for me, it was easier to imagine being on a vessel like 100 years ago and having to use celestial navigation as your only means of navigating across the ocean.
Yeah, and in terms of we're talking about how this isn't really for most people a practical means. It's for a very small portion of the population is ever going to even be in a situation where this could be useful. But I think the reason why I wanted to make this documentary and why I think this story is cool, definitely biased, but is because it is something that you really get that dependence. You get rid of that dependence on technology and on the way that we're doing, whether you're just driving somewhere and you pull it up in Google Maps, or if you are a boater, you can literally have your GPS go the whole way for you. You can just put it on autopilot and go. So I think there is a certain part about that. Like, is celestial navigation the future of the, in some ways, yes, in some ways, no, but I think that's not the point. I think the point is that it's that closer connection to the ocean, that closer connection to navigating into the world around you and to sort of disconnecting from being so dependent on technology.
I like that. I'm just going to say too, just from a filmmaking standpoint, the film looks, it's really spectacularly shot. It looks amazing. And I know it's not an easy thing to accomplish in most scenarios, but, especially again, when you're on a moving ship with all kinds of things happening, and obviously shooting a documentary, you almost never want to stop rolling because you just never know when something's going to happen too. How big was your camera kit for this shoot, and what did you use?
Yeah, it was pretty tiny and it got smaller. It was for the start, I started with it's a Sony A7 III with a Ronin-esque gimbal on it, and that was you see, especially at the beginning, you have a lot of smooth sweeping shots. There's one of Sophia that I like a lot, where it's sort of she's getting ready to hoist the sail, and that it sort of sweeps around her, and I think that's a pretty cool shot. That actually and I still don't know why, stopped working maybe a day or two in. It wasn't stable, and so I ended up just putting it on a mini tripod and doing it handheld. So you do, if you watch it closely, you do notice that it is a lot more handheld, but it's the smallest possible rig. This is something that I can have in my hand, put it down on deck if I need to, run around with it and not get in much space. So we're talking before about getting in the way. This was the best way. A one-person crew with a tiny camera and a tiny setup, even the gimbal is really, really small. So yeah, that was basically how I shot it. And obviously on the audio side, wind is a factor, and I just had sort of a camera mounted boom mic, but that going in the post-production process, that was something that I knew would be a challenge because we were shooting in the middle of the ocean on a sailboat. There's a lot of sounds involved, but it really was the smallest possible setup.
Chip, Connor, and Sophia, what heading off into the wild blue, what were your expectations for this? Between, I guess, again, I don't want to give anything away if anybody hasn't seen the film who might watch this later, but what did you expect when you left, or hope for, or
I was just hoping that nothing would go wrong.
Okay.
That nothing would break on the boat, and more importantly, nobody would get hurt or lost. Because there's a lot of potential for that, especially on Tabor Boy. Being an old-fashioned vessel, things just go wrong all the time. And if the wrong thing goes wrong at the right time, you can really have big issues. So I honestly wasn't worried so much about the outcome of the race. We're looking forward to winning and performing well, but I just wanted to get there smoothly with that hitch. That was my worry, at least.
Okay, Sophia?
I think I was mostly worried about the weather, not necessarily worried that we were going to get through it, but worried that the whole trip to Bermuda was going to be like miserable cold rain, which absolutely was not the case. We were so lucky with the weather. It was pretty much ideal conditions the whole way there. I think we could have had a bit more wind, but I think you can always wish for more wind. But other than that, I was just excited to be offshore for the first time, and my expectations were just that it was going to be an amazing trip, and that's what it was.
Okay.
And yeah, so I guess one of my worries, kind of similar to Chip's, was less about our performance, and more about personal safety aboard the boat, and in case we might run into some bad weather or like a rogue wave or something of that nature, that would endanger the crew. And expectations was, definitely met expectations and went beyond that. I expected nice weather, gorgeous sail, pretty decent wind, and overall a good time. And it was everything and more.
Well, it seems like, everybody got what they were hoping for at minimum, at least. So it's a good place to start. Do you two have any more questions?
Can you just explain the corrected time on you were racing another vessel? Can you explain how that all worked out?
So before you take part in the race, every boat taking part is giving a rating based on the fact that every boat is different. So there are professionals who will come and look at the shape of your hull and the amount of sail area that you have, and they will actually take into account and give you a handicap based on the other boats in the fleet. So if you have one boat that's just naturally faster than another, that boat could get there, before the slower boat, of course, but your corrected time could still be the same, and that slower boat could have run. So it doesn't become a competition between faster boats and slower boats. It becomes a competition between faster crews and better sailors, as opposed to just having a faster boat and winning.
Oh, that makes sense. So the boat you were sailing against, they've done this quite a bit, apparently. They're sort of like the what do you call it? The favorites, the perennial favorites there. So is this something that, again, happens every year, and who I guess races against them every year? Is it always the same sort of entities that do this, or how does this work for people who haven't seen? And I guess maybe just talk a little bit about the race in general, how long it goes back.
What do you want to talk about, Chip?
Yeah, I can take that. So Spirit of Bermuda, the boat we raced against, I don't believe they'd actually raced it in the past. They would go along as an escort vessel, which was our original plan as well. So we wouldn't race, we would just go along with the fleet just for the fun of it. And I believe that's what Spirit of Bermuda did in the past, but they challenged us to race in November before the summer we took part. And that's where this whole competition came from. It just loaded into this whole big deal. But the race itself is mostly really is for private sailors and their own boats who live all over the East Coast, who come to Marion in Massachusetts to take part in this race. It happens every other summer, so that the between years, the Newport Bermuda race happens, so that people, if they want to, can do both. But the Newport race and the Marion race are very different. The Marion race is far more casual, I guess you could say. It's a lot less competitive, and most people are doing it for fun and to get experience and to get offshore. It's a lot of families sail it together on their boats, so it's a lot more for fun and less about the competition. But the race itself has been going on since, I believe, the 70s. I couldn't tell you the exact year.
Older than most of us. Well, you on the call, for sure. Well, cool. I don't know if I have anything else here. I guess if people are interested in learning this, I mean, how many places are there in the area, I guess in New England, Massachusetts, where young people interested in sailing can actually learn about celestial navigation?
There are a fair number of programs around. I probably couldn't really name any, but if you look it up, there are lots of public programs. Tabor Boy is just for students who actually go to Tabor Academy, but there are a lot of programs and summer programs you can take part in where they do teach celestial navigation and other navigational skills, just to give you some experience in it, really, and experience sailing on tall ships.
And the race itself actually does offer, I believe it's open to the public, but it's mainly publicized for participants. If you want to learn, they do have some classes about celestial navigation and learning to it. It's not as in depth, I would imagine, as sort of the training that we all got at Tabor. That was a pretty special opportunity, but there are opportunities offered through the race itself and through other programs at yacht clubs and other sailing organizations, definitely, that if someone's interested, they can learn.
Well, great. Well, we hope people enjoyed the film. If you watched it, if you haven't watched it, definitely you could still buy a ticket or get a pass and watch Celestial in the Woods Hole Film Festival virtual platform. And maybe we'll see how this looks after I've massacred it, if we want to add this to the playlist as well. But I do want to thank Tabor Academy for helping sponsor the film and promote the screenings. I want to thank Jack for making the film and submitting it to Woods Hole. And it's just a wonderful, it's just beautifully shot and put together account of this adventure that you all went on. And it was really, really fun to watch and watch you all work together toward this common goal and use this, just, I think, really cool. I call it technology, because it's technology, back then, but to do what you did. And yeah, enjoy the film. And thank you all for being here today. Thank you for watching the film. Please tell your friends and neighbors about it. Everybody enjoy the summer. If you guys have anything else to say, and a parting word, it's a very quiet crew.
Thank you.
All right, great. All right.